Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January edition of Clayco Group's webinar series. I'd firstly like to wish everybody a very happy new year, and I hope everyone has had a good start to 2014. The topic of today's webinar is the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, Qianhai, and Hong Kong. Are they competitors or are they allies? There's been a tremendous amount of information in the media since October concerning the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, and there's been also articles in the media regarding Shenhai, but less so than the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. And I thought this was an opportune moment to make a comparison between the three areas and what advantages and disadvantages it actually has. Free trade zones, like in Shanghai, special economic zones like in Qianhai, there are nothing new in China. In fact, there's so many that they shouldn't really be called special anymore. They began popping up in the 1980s when China threw open its doors to the West, ending decades of economic and political isolation. And the first special economic zone was actually established in Shenzhen. Most zones offer companies preferential policies such as tax breaks and lower tariffs to boost exports and attract foreign investment. But the Shanghai Pilot Free Trade Zone and the Qianhai Special Economic Zone will both be very different. So the questions that I have that I'd like to get answered in today's webinar are, how different are they from the traditional zones that we're all familiar with? What will be their specific advantages and for which industries? What are the current challenges companies are facing in those zones? And how will Hong Kong's role change in the eyes of foreign investors, and will it lose its business from these two cities? So we have quite a bit to get through today. Prior to starting, I would like to make sure that everybody could hear me. So if you could raise your hand, there should be a small hand in your panel. Then I know that the sound is okay. For your information, the presentation will be distributed after the webinar to all attendees, so you will be receiving copies. If you do have questions, please do place them in the panel section, in the questions section of the panel. We might have time for a small Q&A afterwards. Otherwise, I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts about the various zones. What have been their experiences? So please do write to us. It'd be very interesting to know how your experiences have been. For those of you that are new to Clayco Group's webinar series, I'd just like to introduce who we are. Clayco is an international accounting and management consulting firm that was established in Hong Kong in 1979. We've grown to having just over 120 consultants and legal professionals that are based throughout our 10 offices. Our head office is still headquartered in Hong Kong, but we have 8 offices in China and Singapore as well. We assist foreign companies with their market entry into that are required.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, webinars made easy.
Apologies, we just seem to have some audio problems. We help SMEs in entering the market with all the administrative functions that are required. A little bit about myself. My name is Christina Kohler. I'm a director at Clayco Group. I joined the firm in 2003 and was based in Shanghai as its China director. I've been helping foreign investors entering the China market specifically for the last 10 years. I'm also co-author of ChinaInvest.biz, which is a monthly magazine which has various insights into new developments, new regulations that are associated with China. So let's get started. I'm going to be going through a little bit of background regarding the Shanghai Pilot Free Trade Zone, regarding Qianhai, as well as Hong Kong, and then I will try to bring it all together into a conclusion at the end of the day. The conclusion is based on my opinions. I think everybody else might have different opinions based on their experiences and what they've read in the media since October. So do take it with a grain of salt, but I'll try and tie it all in the end. So to start off with, there's the Shanghai Pilot Free Trade Zone. On 17th of August 2013, the establishment of the Free Trade Zone was finally confirmed when the State Council approved it. And it was opened on the 29th of September 2013, which again, this is amazing in China. Regulations this big do not happen that fast. So to have something approved and within 1 month or 6 weeks to have it officially opened, this is a tremendous push by the government. And it's a tremendous push actually towards financial reform and market liberalization. The Shanghai Free Trade Zone is actually one of the most significant special economic zones in China since the first one was opened in 1980. And it aims to introduce a series of overhauls in finance, in shipping, in trading, in professional services, as well as in cultural and social services. The Shanghai Free Trade Zone combines several existing bonded zones. As I've mentioned here, it's a very small area of land, only 28.78 square kilometers, and it encompasses the Waigaoqiao Free Trade Zone, the Free Trade Logistics Park, the Yangshan port, as well as the airport. Unlike traditional bonded zones, the Free Trade Zone will have fewer restrictions, such as exemption from customs supervision, unlimited period of storage of goods. With the economic growth slowly under current economic regulations, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone will explore a new path that will be replicated in other parts of China if it proves successful. Chinese authorities also hope the Shanghai Free Trade Zone will boost China's overall competitiveness in the global market. What is the reform analysis? So I'll start off firstly with the optimized administrative system and what they're planning on doing here. And there are 3 main points. The pre-establishment of national treatment. Basically, in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, all foreign companies will be treated the same as domestic investors from the start of their business activities in China. So what this basically means is that all the rules and regulations that apply to foreign investors will also be applied to domestic investors and vice versa.
Welcome to GoToWebinar.
The negative
Webinars
list.
made easy.
The Shanghai Free Trade Zone will use a negative list approach, the first in China, for investment, meaning any sector not specifically prohibited by the list will be permitted and only subject to a simple filing with the Shanghai Free Trade Zone authorities. The complete list was issued by the Shanghai municipal government on 30th of September. It lists 18 industrial categories, and quite frankly, it is a replica of the existing catalog of industries for guiding foreign investment. So quite honestly, there are no changes from the previous catalog of industries for guiding foreign investment. All they've done is change the name into the negative list. Simplified approval procedures. The Standing Committee of the National People's Congress has authorized a proposal to suspend for 3 years approval procedures for foreign investment projects, including for establishment, dissolution, mergers, operating terms, registered capitals, and other major changes for FIEs. Shanghai authorities have also issued a regulation that stops the review and approval procedures for the FIEs within the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. In the meantime, foreign investment projects not listed on the negative list must just be simply filed with the authorities. So in theory, according to this, the application procedure for a company in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone should only take between 3 to 5 working days. Now, this is comparison to outside of the zone, where establishing a limited company can take up to 6 months. Now, just to make a note here, we are in January. In December 2013, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone had been opened for 3 months. There was a complete backlog of applications to set up companies, banks, etc. And as a consequence, currently, if you're setting up in the zone, the application will also take about 6 months. So at this very moment, there are no changes in regards to the approval procedures, and there's really no simplification. What are the tax benefits? Well, the first is deferred taxes. The following income taxes may be paid in installments over 5 years. The first is enterprise income tax, which is triggered by overseas investments or asset restructuring. And the second is individual income tax, which many people in the media haven't spoken about, which is triggered by asset restructuring through non-monetary assets. Export tax refund. Export taxes, this is mainly referring to VAT tax and consumption tax, will be refunded on a trial basis for goods that financial leasing companies or their subsidiaries lease to overseas customers through financial leasing processes. Please note it's under the trial program. Export tax refunds are available only when the ownership of the leased product is transferred to the overseas customer. So I'd like to pinpoint one aspect here. With every benefit or every point listed in the new system, you have to look at the buts and see what they entail. Import tax policies are the same as those applicable to other free trade zones in China. Thus, equipment imported by companies that will provide supporting services to other companies in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone is still not eligible for import tax exemption. Import taxes, customs duties, and input VAT continue to be exempted for imported machinery and equipment used by manufacturing companies and companies in the production service sector. Products processed and produced by companies in the free trade zone using bonded materials that are resold to domestic consumers outside the Shanghai Free Trade Zone are still subject to customs duties, input VAT, and or consumption tax. So I've listed here the operative administrative systems, what are the main advantages, and currently what are the disadvantages, the tax benefits that are also associated. One last tax benefit I do want to mention here, as it was mentioned in some of the media articles since October, is that on the rumor mill it was projected that the enterprise income tax would be lowered from 25% to 15%. This has not occurred, and this is not written in the regulations. So currently the taxes in the zone are still at 25%. And this is a key point that I will reflect on later in my conclusion. Financial management, this is the key aspect actually to businesses that are moving into the zone. That's related to banks and any type of financial service company. There is going to be a financial deregulation. It's been highly publicized in the media that the renminbi will become freely convertible, while interest rates and exchange rates will also be liberalized. The Shanghai Free Trade Zone will allow the market to decide the prices of financial institution assets as well. Permitted financial services, well, the first is banking, then there's commodity futures trading, Sino-foreign banks, financial leasing. In relation to trade management, there's a national treatment is to be applied in the industries like brokerage agencies, credit investigating companies, educational training, recreation places, etc. The shipping industry will also be slightly liberalized in that it will eliminate the equity restriction for foreign capital in the vessel transportation companies. The logistics industry, in my opinion, seems to benefit the most. There's several advantages that are now being provided to them. Logistics companies registered in the free trade zone may now have a majority share, though they will still need to be a joint venture when they set up. Transfer of cargo by shipping companies will now be allowed inside the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. Shanghai will become a consolidating point for goods bound for other ports, and this will put pressure on ports of other countries that currently handle this type of transfer traffic. So to give you an example, Korea stands to lose considerable volume when goods no longer need to travel to Busan or Incheon to be transferred before going to northern China. And the same principle will apply for air cargo, because obviously the Pudong airport is part of the zone. Foreign ships will now be allowed to ship from the Shanghai Free Trade Zone to other domestic ports. Currently, only Chinese-owned vessels are allowed to do that. Customs administration will be greatly simplified. Currently, border clearance is performed according to each individual waybill. Inside the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, border clearance may be done by monthly or even quarterly clearance of all waybills. Goods can be delivered directly to your warehouse in the Free Trade Zone without waiting for customs clearance. This is especially important for fresh food. So people in the food and beverage industry should really take note of this. The current wait of a couple of weeks will be eliminated, and the goods can go directly into a temperature-controlled warehouse. Perhaps the biggest impact on the supply chain is that the Shanghai Free Trade Zone will now be more attractive as an international hub. Goods can be delivered to the zone and be held in inventory without paying duty. This is very similar to other trade zones in China. Only when an item is shipped domestically is the duty paid. Items bound for other countries will also not be subject to duty or complicated customs procedures. So in which industry is actually this most interesting? Well, quite honestly, it's e-commerce. E-commerce has been a hot topic within the last 12 to 18 months. Basically now, foreign goods can be imported into the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. The duty will be deferred until the item is actually physically ordered from a Chinese customer or from an Asian customer. So that's one of the main advantages. I've listed here the specific industries that are opened up into the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, so financial, shipping, commerce and trade services, professional services, cultural services, and social services. Again, you'll be receiving the presentation at the end of this webinar, so you'll be able to go through this a little bit more clearly. One point that I have forgotten to mention, which is a new regulation that has just come out in the past week, is that in all of China now, registered capital has become also liberalized. All minimum registered capital amounts for establishing companies has been revoked. This will impact companies in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone as well as outside of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. So please do keep your eyes on that. This regulation will come out as of March 1st, so it is not immediate, but the circular did come out in the last week. Now looking forward into the Qianhai Special Economic Zone. I've added Shenhai here because, quite honestly, in my opinion, it's a direct competitor to the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. What's a little bit interesting is that Shenhai actually was approved prior to the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, and its main advantages are really associated with the financial services industry. But to give you a little bit of background, the initial idea was to make it a global center for the financial commodity market trading, supply chain management, and global wealth management. There were 6 industries that are supposed to be focused on in Qianhai. The first is the financial, logistics, IT, applied scientific service, professional service, and public service. Qianhai, as you can see on the map, it's just about an hour's drive northwest of Hong Kong. It is still considered part of Shenzhen and is actually a district of Shenzhen. It's a 6 square mile piece of reclaimed land. And in the last 3 years, it's been a basic construction site. The estimated completion date of Qianhai is by 2020 to become a thriving financial services center. People in the media have been calling it a future mini Hong Kong or a Manhattan of the Pearl River Delta. Shanghai has a much larger purpose also than previous economic zones. Its success could really be a major turning point in China's push to liberalize its economy and create a fully convertible currency. Under Beijing's watchful eye, the existing channels for cross-border currency flows between Hong Kong and the mainland would widen, banks based in Shanghai and Hong Kong would be allowed to set their own interest rates for renminbi-denominated loans to companies registered in Shanghai. In fact, 15 Hong Kong banks have already been authorized to lend to companies in the zone. Chinese companies in Shanghai will also be able to directly issue renminbi bonds in Hong Kong, known as dim sum bonds. Qianhai is also set to welcome all the foreign-funded private equity firms, and there will be special preferential policies that will be provided to them. And on top of all of that, Qianhai, unlike the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, is supposed to receive corporate and income tax breaks. The stipulation is that the income tax rate will go down from 25% to 15%. But again, this is not finalized at the time being. Of course, Qianhai, being that it's only a 60-minute drive from Hong Kong, has raised questions about Hong Kong's future as an international financial center in itself. Following the British handover to the Chinese authorities in 1997, Hong Kong was granted a large degree of control over its own economic, political, financial, and legal system. That made it a perfect setting for foreign companies that wanted to access the Chinese markets while maintaining their head offices in a capitalistic economy with a strong rule of law and a westernized business culture. Hong Kong's unique status as both a Chinese territory with special privileges as well as a modern city with plenty of clout in international markets has also helped Chinese companies expand offshore. And in my opinion, this will not change. So really the only advantage of Qianhai at the time being is that it's still being constructed. There are companies that are based there, but not too many. One point that I would like to make is that there are several financial institutions that have relocated in the last 3 months from Qianhai to Shanghai. So there seems to be more competitiveness between Qianhai and Shanghai versus Hong Kong and Qianhai. So that's something to keep in mind. What is the future of Hong Kong? Well, in 2014, Hong Kong is once again set to take the leading role in the region's financial services. Hong Kong ranks 3rd in the latest Global Financial Center Index, which chooses 75 of the world's major cities and measures their state of competitiveness in the financial sector. Usually the top 2 cities are London and New York. Hong Kong is generally very far behind on the list after these 2, but as of 2013, the gap closed and now Hong Kong just stands 20 points behind. It is said that Hong Kong could overtake New York and go into the 2nd position. The relative success comes through Hong Kong constantly improving its 5 broad areas of competitiveness, which is business environment, financial sector development, infrastructure, human capital, and just general infrastructure developments. Through drive and innovation, the city leads in many aspects of the financial services. So where are the risks for Hong Kong? Well, there are external microeconomic forces that have boosted Hong Kong's financial development, but at the same time have brought new challenges to the sector. Now there's obvious increasing domestic competition from Shanghai and Qianhai, but people tend to now forget that there's also competition from other Asian markets such as Singapore, which is ranked 4th in the list, and Tokyo, which is ranked 5th in the list. And it is projected also that if Hong Kong becomes complacent, that Singapore could actually overtake Hong Kong. Hong Kong continues to be a renminbi offshore center. For a decade, it was the only city allowed to conduct offshore renminbi business. But obviously, since Qianhai's development and now very recently Shanghai's opening, there's a lot more competition in terms of the free convertibility of the RMB and whether Hong Kong could become obsolete. In addition to that, there are other cities outside of Hong Kong or outside of Hong Kong, China, that are gaining momentum in terms of the renminbi offshore status. Singapore is also vying for a piece of the pie. London, New York, Tokyo, Paris, they're all trying to get a piece of pie of this renminbi internationalization. One can also not forget that the issues of the living environment does cause challenges to Hong Kong's progress as an international financial center. High housing and rent costs, the air pollution, it all causes people to not want to move to Hong Kong, especially their families, and it could eventually cause problems for the city in finding talented individuals. Having said that, Qianhai and Shanghai are having exactly the same problems, whereby the cost of living, particularly in Shanghai, it's not as high as Hong Kong, but it's definitely increasing on a year-to-year basis, and pollution levels are not that much better, if not worse. What's the way forward for Hong Kong? Well, firstly, in my opinion, the city should continue to benefit from the opportunities of the mainland companies in terms of trade, investment, finance, and business. After all, it is the second largest economy in the world. China is thriving in business and financial development, and Hong Kong should not miss out on the emerging market. So it really should continue to do as much as it can to promote itself amongst the Chinese companies. The fact that there is an increasing number of renminbi offshore hubs is not necessarily a negative development for Hong Kong. And in fact, if there are more offshore hubs, then the pie could actually get bigger and Hong Kong could add benefits through its experiences. And quite honestly, it seems from the Chinese government that all funds would still be flowing through Hong Kong. Hong Kong is also a paradise for innovation, for startups, for small SMEs who want to stake a claim in Asia Pacific as a whole. Because of the fact that Hong Kong is westernized, it's got a series of cultures, qualified skilled laborers, local laborers, attractive tax scheme, ultra-simplified administrative setups compared to China. It really does make it an ideal place for startups that are looking to be located there. One thing that people also don't realize is that if you are planning on establishing a physical presence in Hong Kong in a high-tech sector, then the government does provide subsidies in the form of office space, funds available for marketing, financial guarantees, etc. And I just want to refer very briefly to a competition that was held last year through Invest Hong Kong, where it was a competition for startups looking to establish in the region. I believe they had over 500 applicants, and the results came out in December last year, and financial aid was provided, etc. So the conclusion, is the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, Qianhai, and Hong Kong competitors, or are they allies? Well, I'd firstly like to start off with Hong Kong. In my opinion, Hong Kong is over and beyond the level and sophistication and maturity that the Shanghai Free Trade Zone and Qianhai are at. If you're looking today to establish into the Asia-Pacific region or even into China, I think Hong Kong is still a good first step. It has the infrastructure, it has the maturity, you can establish a company very quickly, and all the rules and regulations are black and white. So I still believe that Hong Kong is an ideal location, and I don't believe that it will lose this competitiveness compared to Shanghai or Qianhai. If you're looking at Qianhai, although the development started prior to the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, there's still a way to go. The start date is supposed to be by 2020 with the full completion of the zone. My belief is that the Shanghai Free Trade Zone will be the first priority for the Chinese government. If it is successful, then all the rules and regulations that were implemented into the Shanghai Free Trade Zone will then be replicated in Shanghai, and maybe sooner than 2020. One thing that I would like to mention about the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, because we've been receiving a lot of inquiries from companies that are looking to go into that region, going into that zone compared to outside of that zone. The first is be careful and be aware of the limitations that the Shanghai Free Trade Zone has. It's only 29 square meters. Rental prices will go up very swiftly. The availability of office space will be limited, particularly now that all the banking financial institutions have already started their applications. And there are several top trading companies that are opening subsidiaries inside the zone. So be aware of the availability of office space. The second is, as the media has portrayed, as well as the regulations of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone have portrayed, you can establish a company within 3 to 5 working days. That is currently not the reality. The backlog is tremendous, and as I mentioned, if you are going to establish a company, it will still take about 6 months to do the full completion. Registered capital has been revoked, so this is an advantage for many companies. But the regulations will only come out March 1st, so you have another 6 weeks to wait on that. In addition to that, with the profits tax not being lowered in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, so for it remaining at 25%, this is not going to be necessarily an advantage over Qianhai, where it is promised it will go down to 15%, or Hong Kong, where it's at 16.5%. So keep this in mind also for your businesses. Focus on the specific industries that have been pinpointed by the government. In my opinion, currently, the only advantage really available is for e-commerce, or if you are in the financial services sector. But for e-commerce businesses, if you can find a suitable warehouse space available in the free trade zone, then it has great advantages when you're looking to sell, and it can eliminate all customs issues that are currently being pushed when you're outside of the zone. Last but not least, the cities that are projected to be replicated once the Shanghai Free Trade Zone has actually worked is Qianhai in Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Tianjin, Chengdu has also been mentioned, and a few others. So it will be interesting to see in the next 6 months how the development proceeds. One thing that I do want to mention that's quite interesting that hasn't happened previously is that the Local Promotions Bureau and the Government Bureau of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone are very open to receiving comments from foreign investors in terms of the policies and the application procedures of opening a company. This hasn't happened before. So they're open to suggestions on how improvements can be made, how processes can be improved, etc. So it's a good step forward. Patience is really one of the keys to success in China. And one of the points that I do want to mention here is don't rush into developing your business in China. Make sure you really do understand the advantages and disadvantages of each of the zones. Hong Kong, very simplified, open market, easy to operate, and the rules and regulations are black and white. In the Shanghai Free Trade Zone currently, in my opinion, the laws and regulations are not fully implemented yet. So if you are going to be establishing your business, I would wait another 6 months to really understand how the system works, what are the experiences of the existing companies that are located in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, so that you can learn from their mistakes. And trust me, in the next 6 months, there will be a lot of media publicity in regards to problems that are occurring within the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. So if you are an SME and you're very careful about your risks in China and the investments that you're making, then wait. If you are in a rush, I would suggest to actually set up first outside of the zone and see whether then you could set up subsidiaries and branches into the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. But take your time. It's very difficult to fix mistakes that are made or to fix decisions that were made by board of directors at a later date. So be aware of this. So to summarize in just a few sentences the whole presentation, in my opinion, again, Hong Kong is really the leader in terms of investment jurisdictions. Shanghai, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone is catching up. I don't see it as a competitor to Hong Kong. I think it offers very different incentives to a variety of different industries. I think the renminbi becoming liberalized is a step forward. It's great, and eventually I assume that the Hong Kong might even become unpegged from the US dollar and might also then be tied in with the RMB. So that is the future. It's a question now of how long it will take, and it's something to see forward. That is the end of our presentation. I hope I was able to give you an overview of these 3 new jurisdictions and how they compare to each other and whether they really are competitors or allies. Maybe you've made your own decisions on that based on your business models. Again, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are listed here. And we hope to see you again for next month's webinar, which will be based on online selling into China. Thank you all for coming, and I wish you a very good afternoon. Goodbye.